How is it going, guys? Today is gonna be a good day because we are finally lowering the WRX and getting rid of that massive wheel gap. Lowering your car is one of my favorite modifications because although you're not necessarily changing anything on the exterior of the car, it still makes a drastic difference in the appearance, especially when paired with things like a lip kit or wheels and tires. Now, when you're lowering your car, you have a couple different routes you can take, but the easiest and most affordable way is with a set of lowering springs, which is what we're gonna be installing today. These are the AeroflowDynamics Lowering Springs. They're gonna lower the car about 1 inch all the way around so you get a nice and noticeable drop, but nothing too drastic where you have to worry about rubbing or scraping everywhere you go. And they're also gonna maintain the OEM ride quality. So if you're installing these on a daily driver or you take your car on long road trips, you don't have to worry about being uncomfortable or feeling every crack or bump in the road travel up your spine. They're not only going to lower the car, but also maintain that comfort. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys how to get these installed on the car, and then we can see how much better it looks. Obviously, the first step is getting the car up in the air and getting the wheels off. I'm gonna start by removing the strut in the front first, and then we'll move to the rear. And once I have all 4 off, I'll show you how to replace the springs. We're gonna remove the 12mm bolt holding the brake line to the strut. I'm just gonna put this bolt back in place so we don't lose it. On the opposite side, we need to unclip this ABS line from the strut. I just use a pair of needle nose pliers to squeeze the tabs. Remove this 17mm nut holding the Endlink in place next. Easiest to do with an impact. And then you can pull the Endlink out. These two 19mm bolts holding the strut to the hub are coming off next. You may need to jack the assembly slightly up to take some pressure off so you can pull these bolts out. But after that, you should be able to lower everything down. All we've got left are 3 14mm nuts in the engine bay. If you have someone helping you do this, just remove these while your helper holds the strut in the wheel well. If you're doing this yourself, I'll show you a little trick. I usually remove 2 of them. And then I'm going to just leave this third one on loosely so I can unscrew it by hand. So what I can do is hold the strut up with one arm in the wheel well and use my other arm to unscrew that last nut. And then I can safely pull this out, making sure I don't get caught on any of the wire or cables. Jumping to the rear of the car inside the trunk, I've already removed the trunk liner on the bottom. We need to remove this trim piece right here that's held in place with 3 pop clips that I've already removed, 2 on the sides and 1 in the middle. And then we're gonna pull this straight up and out. To remove the liners on the sides, there's just 5 push clips that can easily be removed with a flathead screwdriver. There's 2 up front here, 1 up top, 1 in the middle, and 1 at the back. We'll remove this styrofoam piece too, and then we can pull this out. There's 2 14mm nuts holding the top hat in place. We're gonna do a similar thing to the front, where I just leave 1 loosely on there. I'm gonna leave the one that's furthest to the front loosely on there and fully remove the one in the rear. Underneath the car, we've got 3 different bolts we need to remove. This one right here that holds the lower control arm to the subframe is a 17mm bolt. The Endlink bolt is a 14mm, and the lower strut bolt is also a 17mm. Oh, I'm an idiot. I should have left that in there. Don't be dumb like me and take the bolt that's holding the lower control arm out first. There we go. Just like earlier, I'm gonna reach down here and hold the strut with one arm and reach back here and remove that nut I left on with the other. I've got the back seat down, obviously, and you can easily reach that nut from here. Okay. There we go. Now that we have all 4 of these struts removed, we can move on to swapping out the springs. There's a couple things we're gonna need to do this. One is a set of spring compressors. Depending on the car, those springs are gonna be under a different amount of preload. So when you go to remove the top hat nut, if you aren't using spring compressors, that spring is gonna explode and send parts flying everywhere, and you definitely don't want that. To be honest, these springs aren't under that much preload, but we're gonna be using these just to be safe. We're also going to need a pass-through ratchet set. This is gonna allow you to use a Allen key socket to pass through the middle while you turn that nut that's holding the top hat in place so the strut doesn't spin. So I'm gonna work on the rears first and then we can move to the fronts. We're gonna get the spring compressors on here first. And you'll wanna get them on opposite sides as best you can to make sure the force is even. We don't actually have to compress the spring, we just want to make sure that it doesn't want to expand once we take the top hat off. So now I'm going to take the pass-through wrench with a 14mm socket for the rears and then a 5mm Allen key socket. There we go. Top hat can come off, and now we can release the spring compressors. Perfect. We'll pull the stock spring off. Put this back on there. Then we can grab our new AeroflowDynamics Lowering Spring. Slide that in place. Make sure that the end of the spring lines up with the collar here. And then we can replace our top hat and reinstall the nut. Now, since these are a little bit shorter, we don't have to use the spring compressor to reinstall the nut on there. And make sure everything's lined up. And then we use the pass-through socket and the Allen key socket again to tighten things down. Now we can move on to the front. There's a couple differences for the front. One is how I have the spring compressors lined up, because on this side, there's not room for the stud to go down this way, so I just flipped it. And then on top here, there's gonna be a cover that you'll need to remove to reveal the nut holding the top hat in place. And instead of a 14mm nut, this is a 17mm nut, and you're gonna need a 6mm Allen to hold the strut in place. There we go. To install the new front spring, you do need to utilize the spring compressors to compress the spring and make it shorter so that we're able to reinstall the top hat. So I'm gonna slide this on here. Again, making sure to line the spring up with the stop on the bottom. And let's see if we can get this top hat back on. Oh, this is gonna be tight. I think I need to set this on the ground. I'm praying this doesn't blow up in my nuts. Okay, here we go. Oh, I think I got it. Okay. Don't forget to reinstall that cap on the top hat. And now we can get these reinstalled on the car. If you guys have made it this far, you know exactly how to get those struts reinstalled on the car, so I'm not gonna put you through that. I'm gonna do it real quick, and then we have one other thing we need to install. I've got all 4 corners reinstalled. If you guys are curious on the torque specs, I'll leave them down in the description. There's a couple things to note. One, yes, you do need to get in alignment after installing these because you're messing with the suspension geometry. Lowering the car is gonna naturally add some negative camber and it's gonna mess with the toe, so make sure you get in alignment. The second thing is that these cars do not come with any rear camber adjustability from the factory. Now, we're not lowering the car that much, so we can get away with the stock arms. But if you're wanting to adjust the camber in the rear, you need to pick up some adjustable rear lower control arms. I have some that I'm gonna install later on, but like I said, for now, we can get away with the stock arms. As for the wheels, a while back, I asked you guys to vote on what color wheels we're gonna be installing on the car, and it turns out you guys really like bronze. These are the AeroflowDynamics GT1 wheels in an 18 by 9.5 plus 38 fitment. I've got a 255/35 tire on here. This is the ideal fitment for these cars to bring the wheels out flush with the fenders, and that extra width is gonna be nice once we take this thing out on the track. I swapped out the stock lug nuts for some black ones from AeroflowDynamics as well, but let's lower this thing to the ground and see how we did with the springs. I've got the car on the ground. I rolled it back and forth to let it settle a little bit, but let's take a look at this. I used to be able to stick my whole fist into this wheel gap, but now it's about 3-finger wheel gap all the way around. Like I said, a nice noticeable drop, but nothing too drastic where we have to worry about rubbing or scraping everywhere, but it looks a whole lot better, especially with those wheels. Let me know what you guys think. It's getting a little bit dark out now, but I'm gonna take this thing out, get you guys some B-roll shots and some driving impressions. So I've been driving the car a bit on the new lowering springs, and I've got to say, they ride very similar to stock, if not slightly better. Might be a placebo effect, but I feel like they're a bit more forgiving over bumps and such. Like I said, these are going to maintain your ride comfort. So if you are installing them on a daily driver or you take your car on long road trips, you don't have to worry about being uncomfortable after a few hours with these installed. And the install is not all that difficult. It's pretty straightforward, as you saw. And for being able to pick these up for about 275 bucks with my discount code, these are great bang for your buck mod. You're able to lower your car, get rid of some of that wheel gap, and since you're lowering the car, you're lowering that center of gravity, which is gonna keep the car more planted through the corners. I'm actually gonna be taking the car to the track this weekend, so we'll be able to see how the car does out on track. And the wheel and tire setup we have now looks amazing, looks way better than the stock wheels. And the wider and stickier tires are gonna give us additional grip out on track. This car continues to grow on me, but we have a lot left to do. Let me know what you guys think. If you're wanting to pick up a set of lowering springs for yourself, the link is down in the description. You can use my code KevinVo to get 5% off anything on the AeroflowDynamics website. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to ask. I'm always happy to help. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the new content. If you are, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.